And now let me introduce Ole Kristensen from Denmark, who's a software artist.
Hello, do you hear me? Yes. I will start by showing you just a bit of what that might be, software art. Oh, wait a second. It's past sunrise. I have to turn off this. There we go. So, as you can see, I work primarily with modern dance. This is a trailer from one of our latest works in Recoil Performance Group, where we try to fuse technology and modern dance, which is a quite traditional art form on stage. So apart from having really talented dancers, we work together as software programmers and dancers and choreographers in a sort of co-creation spirit, you might say. At least we're all considered artistic participants in the process. And now there's a moment. There. So we like doing tricks with spaces and let the spaces react with the dancers. And the key thing is that with the digital has the opportunity of being present in the now. As it was mentioned, my name is Ole Kristensen. I call myself a software artist. I work primarily visually, and I write software and build electronics, work with interactive installations, visual art, and what I call mad science. That would be rapid iteration prototypes of things that have no apparent purpose than reflection. So that, in that sense, I'm working in different institutions in Copenhagen, and there's a long list. I'm just going to skip it because I'm here as part of a Recoil Performance Group, a modern dance group that is formed together with Tina Tapgau, who's the choreographer, and another software artist, Jonas Jungian, and of course we are involving many more people. Our work is defined through this mission statement: through dance, software programming, and electronic sound, we create performances that aim to explore technology as an equal and interactive partner to the artists, the performing artists. So I just showed that moment again. You shouldn't show it too much, so I'll just continue. What I would really like to talk about, not so much myself, but more this word digital, because digital is at the heart of many of the conversations here. And I think that it's one of these things that maybe would require a bit of reflection. And especially when we talk about digital art, there are certain kind of notions that inevitably pop up. It can be generative, interactive, on-demand, immersive, co-creative, non-linear, and the heavy one, telematic. You can look that up. So there are all these buzzwords that tend to appear when you say digital art. So what if we remove them and actually also remove digital and look back? What is possible with art if it wasn't digital? Well, the exact same things. We've had broadcast media, we've had peer-to-peer radio, you can send messages through all kinds of other channels than digital. So many of the things that we tend to think of as digital in terms of art are possible if you remove the digital component. That's a way of qualifying the word digital, because digital has come to substitute the word modern, perhaps. So that's what I would suggest. Try thinking, when you're thinking about your things, whether or not they would be possible without being digital, and that's at least what I try to do in my practice. As a software programmer, I tend to think quite narrowly about digital art. It's of course on the network. That's default, no computers or islands anymore. But code is running on machines, and also increasingly important, especially in the rights context, as was mentioned before. The representations are illegible to humans without machines. We have to be very careful as artists to demand encryption of our own creative content that is very detrimental to our cultural heritage. And that's just a small parenthesis. Encryption works, and we are really dependent on these machines to experience art that is code running on machines. So that's why I like to call it software art, because software is at the heart of what I do. That's at least part of my practice. And when you look at software art, what would qualify it? Well, in my practice, software art is code as artistic material. It's the means of expression. Of course, the audience doesn't see the code, but they see the result of the code. So you might say that it's kind of a directing effort where you direct machines to do part of the show. It's technology as an actor in the now. That's why I love doing modern dance. It's in the now. And we don't play videos. Our systems see where the dancers are and react to the dancers' movement live. And that's very vulnerable as well. We might experience crashes of our software in front of an audience. It happens. Well, that means that we learned something new that day. So it's a very fragile, dynamic aesthetics that we work with. I'm going to show you just very shortly, because I have very little time here, just a bit of software art in practice. I'm just going to skip through it, but this is how it looks, right? It's text. It's a text editor with a play button. And what can a text editor with a play button achieve? Oops. That was the wrong one. Oh, damn, I did it. There was a slip up in my presentation. So now it became real. There we go. So let me press play on this one, and let's see if I can get it to run on the right screen. Here we go. So these are words that have been typed in, and they form instructions, and they instruct. Actually, you might say they are instructing a moron. The computer takes everything extremely literally, so it's like talking to a psychopath. Let's see what happens. Will it work? Yes, here's something. So this is just a very simple piece of software that enables a behavior. This circle has a dynamic aesthetic, and you can read sort of intentions into it in the way it's moving. This is purely generative, you might say. As you can see up here, there's a slider, and it's completely unaware of its surroundings. That's one dynamic that is part of software running in the now. It can be purely generative, ignorant to its surroundings. I can then turn up all the way and make it interactive, and then it's kind of maybe boring, right? The other end of the spectrum, where the computer just does exactly what we want it to do, namely be under the cursor here, is kind of boring. There's no middle ground. And I tend to think as this software as a material in the arts as being interesting when we move the slider here between interactive and generative, where there's some kind of embedded intention that's constantly negotiated with the now, what happens in the now. And then, of course, it could move in different ways. Maybe it's a bit nervous about being on stage. So these are sort of basic animation techniques, but when you have them in an interactive context, they actually lend sort of qualities. And if you then try to stretch your imagination and imagine this as a spotlight on a dancer emitted from a video projector instead of just being a piece of graphic on the screen, then you're close to what my practice entails. Good, let's try and go back. So there's just a small glimpse of what I think about when I think digital as a practicing software artist. It is how can code running on machines behave? And it can behave generously, but it can also behave very, very ungenerously. And we have to take care when we start mediating our art through machines, how much generosity we allow for. And there are serious backlashes if we're disingenuous. Well, anyway, so there are challenges in this field. So the challenges I face when I work with digital as a medium in this sense is that it's inherently interdisciplinary. And this brings about a lot of barriers that sort of are right in the face of my practice. And this is not new. Software art has been around since the 70s. I mean, some engineers start doing art, right? So, but it's still, there are some entrenched oppositions. Educations, especially in the country where I'm from, Denmark, have a hard time fusing arts and technical sciences. There's a whole institutional schism between the Ministry of Research and the Ministry of Culture that simply keeps us 40 years back in time. Then there's resources in terms of interdisciplinary resources for the arts. It's also a very, very volatile place, because there are the classical genres that need their funding, but there's new emerging genres have a problem getting access to interdisciplinary resources, and you end up landing between chairs. It's not our table. Then there's time. It takes time, and it takes time, especially in the education, to get talent that is not only technical but also artistically proficient in trying to create things that have an artistic meaning. And this is, of course, a simple example from one of the first things we did, a dance that became a game. Talent. So when you work with arts, you also need to nurture talent. And that's where the institutional context and all the above really, really comes into play. Are we capable with the institutions we have, both the ones that are producing, like you represent, and the rest, of embracing that talent? And the last thing I want to say is, boy, are there very few women involved in software art or practicing with. We have a serious gender gap. Fortunately, the courses I'm teaching are now balanced to the other side. So I think that might actually change in a generation. Sharing is another one. And then I'm going to leave you with this. I just got the stop sign, but this is a genius artwork that I want to share with you if you haven't seen it before. It's actually called Audience. And it's made not by me, but by Random International, a semi-commercial artist group in Britain. Just have a look and then I'll stop. So I think that work really shows very well what I mean when art becomes digital. It is in the now and it reflects what happens around it. Okay, thank you very much. That was it.